Chapter 3. Moonblood. For one breath, no one in the market square moved. The guards held their spears half lowered. The crowd stood frozen behind overturned stalls and dropped baskets, among scattered apples and cracked clay jars. The rescued boy lay shaking on the stones while the priest in blue-gray robes whispered prayers too quickly for the words to make sense. Varon Morwen stood at the edge of the broken shrine with his pale blade in his hand, and below him, through the crack in the street, the golden eye watched. It was not large enough to belong to anything that should have fit beneath the city. It was too still, too patient, too aware, and in the darkness around it 1,000 buried voices whispered his name again. Varon. The sound slid up through the stones and entered him like cold water through a wound. Beside him, the pale wolf growled, its fur standing high along its spine, its amber eyes burning toward the crack. For the first time since Varon had met the creature in the deep roads, it looked afraid. Not frightened like prey, but afraid like something old that had recognized an older enemy. Counselor Merrow lifted his cane and struck the stones once. Closed the square. The spell of silence broke. Guards surged forward with spears leveled. People cried out as they were pushed back through the narrow streets. A fishmonger stumbled over his own cart. A woman snatched up a crying child and ran, and 2 men tried to drag the rescued apprentice away from the shrine. The boy screamed the instant they touched him. "No, no, don't let it see me again." His voice cracked into sobs. Elira Wren shoved one guard aside and dropped to one knee beside him. "Look at me," she said. The boy's eyes darted everywhere, to the crack, to the shrine, to Varon, to the wolf. "Elira," Counselor Merrow snapped. She ignored him. "Look at me," she repeated, softer now. "Not the hole, not him, me." The boy found her face and clung to it with his eyes. "That's it," Elira said. "Breathe." "It was under my feet," the boy gasped. "It was under all of us. It knew my name. It knew my mother's song. It wore her voice." The priest made a sign against evil, and Counselor Merrow's face tightened. Varon noticed, and so did Elira. "What wore her voice?" she asked. The boy swallowed, and his gaze slid toward Varon again. It said the shadow blood had come back. The words struck the square harder than a shouted alarm. Several guards turned toward Varon, and one lifted his spear. The wolf stepped in front of him. Varon lowered his blade, not because he trusted the guards, but because he did not want fear deciding the next breath for all of them. Counselor Merrow descended the shrine steps slowly. He was old, but he moved with care rather than weakness, and his silver bell pin caught the gray morning light at his throat. "Varon Morwen," he said. Varon did not answer. "You gave your name to the road warden." "I did." "And you claim to come from Nisara Deep." "I do not claim it. I came from there." A murmur passed through the guards. Elira rose beside the boy. "Counselor, now is not the time to question him like a criminal." Merrow's pale eyes did not leave Varon. "Now is exactly the time." A shadow-born stranger walks into Orenfall on the same morning the deep bell rings for the first time in 300 years. Possessed men speak of gates, blood, and thrones. A shrine breaks open beneath his feet. Buried voices know his name. "I did not open the ground," Varon said. "No," Merrow replied quietly, "but something beneath it opened for you." The wolf snarled, and a guard near the front flinched. Merrow's gaze shifted to the animal, and his face changed again, just for a heartbeat. Recognition. Varon saw it clearly this time. Merrow's mouth went still. Elira looked between them. "Counselor." Merrow struck his cane against the stone again. "Bind the crack. Chain the beast. Take the Shadowborn to the old watch-house." The wolf lunged forward one step, and every spear in the square lowered. Varon moved faster, placing himself between the wolf and the guards, one hand raised toward the animal, the other still holding the pale blade low at his side. "No chains," he said. Merrow's voice hardened. "That was not a request." "Then give an order you can survive." The square went silent again. "Varen," Elira whispered. Merrow stared at him, the guards stared at him, and the wolf stared at Merrow as if it had already decided where to bite first. Varen felt the weight of the moment balancing on a knife edge. One wrong word, one frightened guard, one snap of the wolf's jaws, and the market square would drown in blood before the thing below ever needed to rise. He forced his voice lower. "I will go with you. The wolf will not be chained." "It is dangerous," Merrow said. "So am I." "That does not help your argument." "It is not an argument. It is the truth." Elira stepped between them before Merrow could answer. "Counselor, the wolf just stopped a boy from being dragged under the street. Varen helped save him. I saw it." "You also saw golden-eyed men rise on the road," Merrow said. "You saw this stranger's blade glow. You heard the voices beneath the square." "Yes," Elira said, "which is why I'd rather keep him where I can ask questions than start a fight we do not understand." Merrow's jaw worked once. From the crack in the shrine, a thin stream of cold mist curled upward, and the rescued boy whimpered. Varen looked down. The golden eye had vanished, and only darkness remained. That was worse. "Elira," he said quietly. She heard the change in his voice. "What?" "The eye is gone." The mist thickened, and the stones around the crack began to sweat. Not water. Black brine. It oozed between the broken edges and ran in slow lines across the shrine floor, and wherever it touched fallen fruit, the skin shriveled, and wherever it reached bronze, the metal darkened. The priest backed away. "By the 3 lights," he whispered. Merrow's face went gray. "Seal it," he ordered. "Now." 2 guards rushed forward carrying an iron grate from a nearby drainage channel and dragged it across the shrine steps, their boots slipping in the black wetness. Varen smelled salt. Old salt, not sea wind or fresh tide, but something that had been trapped for centuries in a place without mercy. The wolf barked once, sharp, a warning. The black brine stopped moving. Then it pulled backward into the crack, all of it at once, as if something below had inhaled. Varen grabbed Elira by the shoulder and dragged her back. "Move." The shrine exploded. Stone burst upward in a storm of broken edges and dark water, and the 2 guards vanished beneath the impact. The bronze bells tore free from their frame and flew across the square, one smashing through a fruit stall, another striking the side of a fountain with a deafening crack. The 3rd bell landed at Varen's feet. It did not ring. It split open. Inside the hollow bronze shell was a lump of black stone wrapped in old silver wire. The wolf saw it and recoiled. Varen had just enough time to look at the object before the ground beneath the shrine opened wider and something climbed out. At first it looked like a man. Then it unfolded. Long limbs dragged themselves through the broken stones, and its body was wrapped in what might once have been burial cloth, though the cloth had fused with barnacle, chain, and blackened bone. Its face was hidden beneath a mask of corroded bronze, featureless except for a single vertical cut where one golden eye burned through. It moved like a drowned thing remembering how to walk. The guards broke. Not all of them, but enough. 2 ran. 1 dropped his spear. Another shouted and thrust at the creature's chest, and the spear punched through cloth and bone. The creature looked down at it, then reached up with one hand and snapped the shaft in half. Elira drew her sword. "What is that?" Merrow whispered something Varen could not hear, but he heard enough to know it was not a question. It was a name. The creature's head turned toward the counselor, and Merrow stepped back. The golden eye narrowed. Then the thing spoke, and its voice was not the 1,000 voices from below, but one voice alone, dry and deep and patient. "Keeper." Merrow's cane slipped in his hand. Elira looked at him sharply. "Keeper of what?" The creature took one step down from the shrine, and the stones blackened beneath its feet. "Gate of stone," it said. Varen's fingers tightened on his blades. Blood of shadow. Its golden eye fixed on him. Key. Then it moved, not slowly, not like a corpse, but crossing the distance with sudden, horrible speed. Varen barely turned the first strike. Its hand hit his pale blade like a hammer, and the impact drove pain up his arm and into his shoulder. He slid back across the wet stones, boots scraping, cloak snapping behind him. The wolf struck from the side. Its jaws closed around the creature's arm and tore, and bone cracked as black fluid sprayed. The creature did not cry out. It slammed its other hand into the wolf's ribs and hurled it across the square, and the wolf hit the base of the fountain hard enough to crack stone. Varen's chest tightened. No. Elira attacked while the creature turned, her blade cutting across its back. The edge bit through cloth and barnacle, then stopped against something beneath that rang like iron. The creature spun, backhanding her aside, and she rolled with the blow and came up bleeding from the mouth, still holding her sword. "Helpful discovery," she spat. "It hates being stabbed." "Most things do," Varen said. "This one less than usual." The wolf rose, slowly, too slowly, and Varen saw the way one foreleg trembled. Then the creature opened its chest, not with hands. The bones beneath its burial cloth split apart, revealing a hollow black cavity where a heart should have been, and inside floated a shard of dark crystal wrapped in the same old silver wire Varen had seen inside the broken bell. The shard pulsed once. The fallen bandits from the road began to move. They had been dragged into the square by guards and left under watch near the fountain, and now their bodies rose, one by one, heads lifting, gold light burning behind their eyes. Elira cursed. Varen turned both blades in his hands. The square became a battle. The first golden-eyed bandit rushed at him with no weapon, only fingers hooked like claws. Varen ducked beneath the grasp and cut low, hamstringing the body. It fell but kept crawling. The second came with a broken spear, and Varen caught the shaft between his blades, twisted, and drove his knee into its chest. No breath left it. No pain slowed it. The wolf leapt over him and crushed the thing's skull between its jaws. For a moment, hope flared. Then the bronze-masked creature raised one hand, and the black shard in its chest pulsed again. The crushed body twitched, and the broken skull began to pull itself back together with threads of gold light. Varen stared. "That is unfair." Elira, fighting 2 steps away, shouted, "Complain later." She drove her sword through a bandit's throat, pinned it to a wooden post, and kicked its legs out from under it. "Counselor, how do we kill them?" Merrow stood near the edge of the square, surrounded by guards who looked more interested in protecting him than helping anyone else. He did not answer. Varen saw the look on his face, and it was not confusion. It was fear. Merrow knew. The wolf lunged at the masked creature again, but this time the creature was ready. It seized the wolf by the throat. Varen moved, and the world narrowed to the creature's hand, the wolf's choking snarl, and the black shard pulsing inside the open chest. He threw the dark blade. It spun through mist and smoke and struck the creature's wrist, biting deep, and the grip loosened. The wolf tore free. But the creature's other hand drove forward, and a splinter of black crystal shot from its palm like a thorn. The wolf turned at the last instant, putting itself between the shard and Varen, and the crystal buried itself deep in the wolf's side. The sound the animal made was not a howl. It was a broken, breathless thing, and Varen felt it inside his own ribs. The wolf collapsed. Something in Varen went cold, then hot, then empty. He did not remember crossing the distance. He only remembered the pale blade in his hand, the masked creature turning, and his own voice leaving him in a language he did not know. Silver light ran along the blade. The creature hesitated. Varen struck. He did not aim for bone. He aimed for the shard in its chest. The pale blade pierced the hollow cavity and struck the dark crystal, and light exploded between them. Not fire. Moonlight, cold and bright and furious. The creature staggered backward, and for the first time it made a sound that might have been pain. The golden light in the risen bodies flickered. Elira saw it. "The chest," she shouted. "Hit the chest." The guards who still had courage obeyed. Spears thrust, swords hacked, crossbow bolts flew. Most glanced away. One struck true, then another. The dark crystal cracked. The masked creature reached for Varin, but Varin stepped inside its grasp, planted one boot against the broken shrine, and drove the pale blade deeper with both hands. The crystal shattered. The creature froze, its golden eyes staring into Varin's, and for a heartbeat the 1,000 voices returned, not from the crack but from inside the creature itself. "Not yet," they whispered. Then the body collapsed into black water, bone, cloth, and empty bronze. Across the square, the golden-eyed bandits fell, and this time they did not rise. No one cheered. The only sound was the ragged breathing of the living and the distant crash of waves below the cliffs. Varin pulled his pale blade free, and the glow faded at once. He turned. The wolf lay beside the fountain, still, too still. He ran to it and fell to his knees. The black crystal shard remained buried in its side, and dark veins spread from the wound beneath the pale fur, crawling outward like frost on glass. Blood pooled beneath the animal, but it was not red. It was silver. Thin streams of shining liquid ran over the stones, bright even under the gray morning sky, and where the blood touched the ground, tiny white flowers pushed up between the cracks, bloomed, and withered in the space of a breath. Elira stopped beside him, her voice softening. "Varin, do not," he said. "I know wounds. Not this one." The wolf's amber eyes opened halfway and looked at him. No fear now, only pain and something like apology. Varin pressed both hands against the wound, and the silver blood slipped warm through his fingers. "No," he whispered. "You do not get to choose me in the dark, drag me out of the deep, judge every foolish word I say, and then leave on the first morning." The wolf's breath shuddered. Varin looked around wildly. "Priest." The blue-gray robed man stumbled forward, his face pale. "I heal sickness of spirit, small cuts, fever, childbirth pains. This is blood. This is not blood I know." "Then learn quickly." The priest knelt, saw the silver pool, and recoiled. "Old powers preserve us." Varin seized the front of his robe. "Preserve him." Elira caught Varin's wrist. "Let him breathe." Varin released the priest, but barely. The priest swallowed and reached toward the wound, his fingers hovering over the black shard. The instant his hand neared it, the silver bell pin at Merrow's throat rang once by itself. Everyone heard it. The priest drew back. Merrow stepped forward slowly. "Do not touch the shard." Varin's voice dropped. "Explain." "That wound is not meant to kill the body first," Merrow said. "It anchors the spirit. Pull it free carelessly, and whatever struck him may take what it marked." Elira stared at him. "How do you know that?" Merrow's eyes remained on the wolf. "Because Orenfall was built over things it should have buried deeper." "That is not an answer," Elira said. "It is the only one you will get in the street." Varin looked back at the wolf. The dark veins had spread farther, and the wolf's breaths came shallow now. He could not wait for counselors and priests and frightened old men to decide how much truth was safe to spend. He reached beneath his cloak for bandage cloth, and his fingers brushed something soft. The white feather. Varin froze. He had carried it since childhood, a single surface feather found in an air shaft beneath the world, a memory of a sky he had never seen until the night before. His mother had never told him where it came from. She had only smiled when he asked. "Some gifts are not answers," she had said. "Some are doors." Varin pulled the feather free. It looked small in his blood-slick hand, too small to matter. The wolf's eye shifted toward it, and the crescent scar above its other eye glowed faintly. "Varin, what is that?" Elira whispered. "A door," he said, though he did not know why. He laid the feather against the wound. Nothing happened. The wolf shuddered. Varin closed his eyes and thought of his mother, of her voice in the dark. "The blades are not there to choose for you." He thought of the forest at dawn, the first birds, the stream, the wolf standing beside him and watching the trees instead of the sunrise. He thought of the two paths his mother had named, fear and hope, and he understood at last that hope was not a soft thing. Sometimes it was teeth. Sometimes it was a hand pressed to a wound that could not be closed. Varin bowed his head until his forehead touched the wolf's fur. "I do not know the words," he whispered, "so take the truth instead." The feather changed. Silver light spread from its edges, thin as breath on cold glass, and sank into the wound, not burning, not cutting, but weaving itself through the silver blood like thread through cloth. The wolf's body arched. Varin gasped as pain tore through his own side, and he looked down to see a black mark appear beneath his ribs in the same place where the shard had struck the wolf. Elira grabbed his shoulder. "What is happening?" Varin could not answer. The silver light wrapped around the black crystal shard, and the dark veins slowed. The feather blackened at the tip. Then the shard cracked, not fully, but a thin fracture ran through it from point to base. The wolf drew one deep breath, then another, and the silver blood stopped flowing. Varin nearly collapsed over it, and Elira caught him before he fell. The priest backed away, whispering prayers with a new kind of terror. Marrow stared at Varin as if the street itself had spoken. "What are you?" the counselor breathed. Varin lifted his head. His vision blurred at the edges, and the wound in his own side throbbed, though no blade had touched him there. Beneath his hand, the wolf still lived. "I am tired of that question," he said. The wolf's eye opened fully, and for a moment Varin heard something. Not the voices below, not the bell. A single word, distant and low, like a name spoken through trees. Ashael. Then it was gone. Varin looked at the wolf, and its amber eye held his. "You heard that," he whispered. The wolf blinked once. Elira looked from one to the other. "Heard what?" Varin almost answered. Then he saw Marrow listening. "No," he said, "nothing." Marrow's face tightened. "Liar," his eyes said. Good, Varin thought. The old counselor struck his cane against the ground. "This square is sealed. No one speaks of what happened here without council leave. The bodies are to be burned. The shrine stones are to be taken below the West Tower vault. The boy goes to the healers." "The boy goes home when he can stand," Elira said. Moreau's gaze snapped to her. "You forget yourself, Wren." "No. I remembered who I serve. The city council." The city. For a moment the two stared at each other. Then Marrow looked away first, not in surrender but in calculation. "Take the Shadowborn and the wolf to the old watch-house," he said, quietly. "If either tries to leave, stop them." Elira's hand tightened around the hilt of her sword. "And if the council tries to bury this under paperwork and locked doors?" Marrow stepped closer, his voice lowering. "Then pray the doors hold." He turned and walked away, guards forming around him like a wall of steel and fear. Varin watched him go. That man knows too much. Elira crouched beside him. That man knows more than too much. He knows exactly enough to be dangerous. The wolf tried to rise, and Varin pressed a hand to its neck. "Not yet." The wolf growled weakly. "You can glare at me after you stop bleeding." It growled again. Elira glanced at the animal. "I think it understands every word you say." "I know. That does not bother you. Many things bother me. That one is far down the list." Elira almost smiled. Then her gaze fell to Varin's side. "You're hurt. It is not mine. It is on your body. That seems to be a disagreement between me and the wound." She sighed. "You are going to be difficult. I have been told." "By who?" "By who? Nobles, hunters, road wardens, traders, a wolf." "The wolf told you." "With its face." Elira shook her head, but the smile came this time only briefly. Then the bells of Orenfall began to ring again. Not all of them, only one. Far below the cliffs, deep and slow and waiting. The wolf lifted its head despite the pain. Varin looked toward the sound. This time the bell did not speak his name. It did not need to. He could feel the pull beneath his feet, under the market stones, under the streets, under every white wall and green roof of Orenfall. A road had opened below the city, and somewhere in that darkness something had learned that Varin Morwen could bleed for the wolf. Something had learned that the wolf could bleed silver. Something had learned they were bound. Elira stood and offered Varin her hand. "Can you walk?" Varin looked at the wolf. The animal struggled upright, swayed once, then stood. Proud, wounded, furious. "Apparently," Varen said, taking Elira's hand, "we both can." They left the ruined square through a narrow street slick with rain and black brine. Behind them, guards covered the broken shrine with canvas, priests whispered over the dead, and merchants peeked from shuttered windows. Somewhere, the rescued apprentice sobbed into his mother's arms. Above them, gulls circled under a brightening sky, and Orenfall continued around the wound as if cities knew no other way to survive. But as Varen followed Elira toward the old watch house, he felt the feather against his palm. It was no longer white. One half remained pale as moonlight. The other had turned black as deep stone. The wolf limped beside him, not close, not far, exactly where it chose to be. At the mouth of an alley it stopped and looked back toward the market, and Varen stopped too. "What is it?" The wolf stared into the city. A figure stood on a rooftop above the square, hooded and still, wrapped in a cloak the color of wet leaves. It was too far away to see clearly, but Varen felt the figure's gaze move from him to the wolf, then to the blackened feather in his hand. The figure lifted 2 fingers to their brow. Not a greeting, not a blessing, a warning. Then a flock of gulls swept across the roofline, and when they passed, the figure was gone. Elira followed his stare. "What did you see?" Varen closed his fist around the feather. "I do not know yet." The wolf made a low sound in its throat, not anger this time, but recognition. Varen looked down at it. "You know them." The wolf began walking again. Elira muttered, "Of course it does." They continued through the waking streets while the deep bell faded under the city. Far behind them, beneath the cracked shrine, the golden eye closed, not in defeat, in thought.